If you just do it, it will turn out okay. Welcome for take 2 of this special episode of Talk Time with Caffeine. We tried 2 weeks ago. Audio issues failed miserably. After an hour, we just gave up, mainly because it was time for VB had to go to bed.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what happens when you work at like 4 a.m. Yeah.
And plus that, I think you're different time zone than I am too. Also, so
Yeah. I live in Seattle, so.
all right. But today we're trying again, and the topic is he corrected me last time, the Wars of the Roses.
Yes. It's not just one war.
Yep. All right. So at least in my head, I could be totally wrong. Even though the actual battles didn't begin until years later, but I think it happened. The start, in my opinion, at least, was when Henry the Fourth, future Henry the Fourth, overthrew his first cousin Richard the Second. But the problem was there, he was a little bit lower on the totem pole biologically of Henry the Third's descendants. Like he was like the third or fourth kid, so he bypassed totally second kid totally. Second or third kid, he bypassed them, which at the time no one I guess cared about that much, since him and his kid Henry V were awesome war people, winning the wars, winning down in France, so no one cared. But then when his son Henry VI came along, people start caring. That maybe the line of success had been jumped a little bit.
Yeah, the line was supposed to go through the Dukes of York. He had right of succession through the Duchy of York, and I think a different son of Edward III. I can't remember which one. Oh man. But yeah, the Dukes of York, eventually Richard, Duke of York, who pretty much starts the war. Yeah, but they didn't really care because yes, Henry V, the Star of England, went on to win, and make it so that Henry VI was technically the heir to the King of France.
This is kind of almost like what Edward III claimed too, because they're both were the descendants of a princess of France.
Yeah, but Henry V was able to get the then King of France to recognize Henry VI. But of course, it doesn't end well for Henry VI.
Yeah,
Joan of Arc comes up and everything.
Yeah, well, I hear voices in my head, lady.
Yeah, but I mean, the groundwork for the Wars of the Roses was laid down long before Henry Bolingbroke, the name of Henry IV, takes the throne. I don't remember when that happened.
I think it was like 1399.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, because that's when his father dies too. His father was a son of Edward III, John of Gaunt. The problems start with Edward III, in my opinion. Edward III essentially is the guy who starts the 100 Years' War. Essentially, since John, England had been dealing with a problem of rebellious noblemen, you know?
And plus, since the time of William the Conqueror, the problem also was that the English kings were also quote vassals to the French king, from either dukes of Normandy or Count of Anjou or Count of Flanders, whatever they were. They were technically vassals.
Yeah. So there's that. But in order to get his kingdom behind him, he there weren't any dukes before Edward III in England. Earl was the highest you could go. He creates a new class and he makes it for his family members. Eventually, his sons, John of Gaunt. Oh my gosh, I'm blanking on all the other names because essentially
Edward, there's Edward, like Edward the Black Prince,
yes,
the heir. Yeah, John of Gaunt. Yeah, if I can find that family tree I had earlier, I can see them all. At least five sons that I'm aware of.
yeah. So
And
he apportions a large amounts of land to his sons, which at the time, yeah, it made it so that the kingdom was united. There weren't any problems. He could do his war in France, but it would come to bite him in the butt.
yeah,
Well, not
especially
him, the kingdom.
yeah, well, especially when his heir died before him, leaving the only heir at the time a kid.
Yeah, yeah, and a big problem. Well, Richard II was trying to wrest control from his cousins, essentially, from the powerful landowners, and he was using certain landowners to try and combat the other ones. There were a couple of rebellions under his reign.
Yeah, and wasn't I might be wrong about this. I'm wrong, but wasn't his uncle the father of Henry the Fourth originally one of his uncle tutor land not what's it called guardian people type people when he was still a kid.
uh, yeah, because John of Gaunt was a pretty good politician. That sounds right. But for some reason, I think in 1398 he exiles Henry Bolingbroke to Ireland, and then when John of Gaunt dies in 1399, he says that Henry IV can't become Duke of Lancaster. So Henry IV's rebellion is originally to gain the Duchy of Lancaster that he sees as his birthright, and he eventually decides, I'm going to just take the throne, I guess, Why not?
Always a good option.
Yeah. But this is really an outgrowth of the 100 Years' War, and Henry VI, not a very strong king, just like Richard II, but he has an extra fault. Henry VI, in times of crisis, seemed to just shut down and stop responding to everything. He kind of, yes, Edmund of Langley, yes. So Richard, Duke of York, he has descent through Lionel of Clarence and Edmund of Langley. Yeah.
Yeah, the Edmund of Langley one is for I guess the claim came from technically it's not the third son, but I guess once you marry your aunt or uncle, great uncle, or whatever the thing is, like that line jumped ahead. A lot of
Yeah. Yeah. It's not as bad as
the Habsburgs,
as William III and Mary II, who were first cousins, I'm pretty sure, marrying.
Yeah, I could say the Habsburgs
in
Australia and Spain, but yeah, not that bad.
Yeah. So yeah, pretty much whenever something crazy happened, Henry VI just would shut down. And so during his reign, the son of John of Gaunt and Catherine Swynford, which Catherine Swynford was essentially John of Gaunt's lover. So this is a illegitimate line. You have the Earls of Somerset and later the Dukes of Somerset. John Beaufort, the Duke of Somerset, is Henry VI's big ally that essentially Henry VI is snubbing Richard of York for John Beaufort, Duke of
Yeah.
Somerset, sends Somerset to France, where he does terribly, and sends Richard to Ireland, which is essentially in exile.
Yeah, and
Richard
also,
isn't a
sorry,
fan.
sorry to interrupt you, but also this didn't also Henry VI have the same problem as his maternal grandfather, that crazy, I don't want to say crazy disease, but whatever that problem he had, his mental problem.
His biggest mental problem was that he would shut down, like essentially be. I mean, he wouldn't be comatose, but he'd pretty
Well,
much just not be there.
yeah, I forget what that was called back in the day, or it is called now. But yeah, I think his whole maternal line had it.
Yeah, yeah, because there was a mad king of France in there or somewhere.
I think that was his grandfather.
Yeah, uh, and Margaret of Anjou is actually a really important figure. The sources don't like her because, of course, powerful women. The sources never like powerful women. She's essentially trying to fight for her son's birthright throughout this thing, and she's a close ally of the uh, the Duke of Somerset. So yeah, Edward. I mean, not Edward. That's his son. Sorry, Richard of York is kind of just done with being snubbed and everything, and so he starts off the Wars of the Roses by saying not that he wants to become king, but that he wants to become essentially the power behind the throne because it a disaster happens in France and Henry's
Yeah.
gone off and he comes back. I think this is when the Battle of St. Albans happens.
Yeah, I also think, yeah, but I also think this. I think like it's like I mentioned. I think I read. I could be wrong, but I read this again. But I also think this is a time like when Henry's mental condition kicked in, and so
Yeah.
Richard took over as because Henry couldn't mentally do it for a while.
Yeah. So Richard essentially takes power, but Margaret doesn't like him. So you just get this struggle between the Lancastrian and Yorkist claims. The reason why it's called the Wars of the Roses is because the heraldry of both houses are roses, the red rose and the white rose, and it wasn't called that during the time. It was I don't think they had a name for it at the time. It was named by Shakespeare.
Uh,
Shakespeare
Years later, after
names
the
it.
obvious winners had been proclaimed.
Yes, yes, and after the Tudors had actually gone away too.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, and this chart doesn't mention it, but both Hen- Henry the Sixth and Edmund were half brothers to their mother.
Henry the Sixth and who?
Edmund Tudor.
Edmund Tudor. Yeah, yeah. So there's a lot of connections, and that's one of the big problems for England during this time. You have a lot of retainers and stuff. So Edward the First. I know this is going back, but it's sort of important to understand how things got the way it is. He's not even on here. He's the
Yeah.
grandfather of Edward the Third.
The
He
guy the guy from the probably really missed
historically
histories
accurate.
uh,
Yeah,
Braveheart
Braveheart.
movie.
Yeah, Longshanks. He essentially professionalizes the army, and you get these powerful retainers taking places in taking like professional soldiers. Before you had to levy your soldiers through a complicated system, like everything
Fe-
is in
the
feudal.
feudalism. Yeah, like, oh, I give you this land, but you promise to fight for me if I need you to.
Yeah, and give me some of your money and everything. This was giving. This was you can have professional fighting forces, and these landowners would compete for these retainers to become essentially the most powerful landowners. And you actually get a feud between the Percy family and the Neville family uh, right before the Wars of the Roses, which is seen as a essentially on. I think that the Earls of Warwick, yeah, they're Nevilles. So Westmoreland is up in the north. Uh, it's I'm pretty sure uh, it's around the area of Lancaster. It's in it's on the border with Scotland, but the western side, not the eastern side. They're fighting against the Percys, and it's uh essentially the prelude to the Wars of the Roses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, I'll talk about this later on, but it's not, again, it's not on this chart, but like the Lady Anne Neville thing was both the wife of Edward, Prince of Wales, son of Henry VI, and the wife of Richard, brother of Edward IV.
Yeah. Richard Neville, or the early Earl of Warwick, it says the Kingmaker there. That's because essentially whichever side he backed for a little bit became the king. Uh, Richard, the Duke of York, eventually gets killed in a battle. I can't remember the name of it. Um, is it Tewkesbury?
I'll look it
Let
up.
me. No, not the Battle of Tewkesbury. There's so many. Richard of York. The Battle of Wakefield. So he dies at the Battle of Wakefield.
And that's when his son, the future Edward
And
IV,
this is he'd take over the cause of the Yorkists essentially. But after the Battle of Wakefield, the Lancastrians think they've won, but Edward the Fourth decides to say, well, I think Richard originally eventually decided that he was going to become king.
Yeah, I think I remember that right, but claiming it and actually doing it are two different things.
And actually having it are yeah, they're quite different. Not the Earl of Rutland. So yeah, eventually, with the aid of the Earl of Warwick, not Warwick. God, English people, come on, pronounce your pronounce your syllables, guys. The Earl of Warwick, they eventually win, and Edward the Fourth becomes king. There's a big problem though. Warwick has a plan for England and for Edward the Fourth to kind of solidify Edward the Fourth's reign and make England and Warwick uh, put them in a more solid position. But
And
Edward the
that's Mary,
Fourth,
and that's Mary, his daughters off to that line.
yeah, he wanted to. I'm pretty sure he wanted to marry Anne Neville to Edward the Fourth, but I'm not sure. So Edward the Fourth loved his women, And there's a story that essentially uh, Elizabeth Grey, who would eventually become his wife, pulled what oh my god, what is Elizabeth the first mom's name? There's so many
I
names.
think they were called the Woodvilles. I think some people called them the Woodvilles.
Oh yeah, Woodvilles. Yes, Woodvilles. Oh, it says Elizabeth Grey on there because she was originally married to a Lancastrian knight who had the last name Grey. But yes, the Woodinvilles. The Woodinvilles were Lancastrians. So you can see how this is a betrayal of the cause, essentially. But he really liked Elizabeth. So, yeah, he marries her behind Richard Neville's back. Currently, Henry VI, Margaret of Anjou, and Edward, Prince of Wales, they are in. That's why I thought the Battle of Tewkesbury. Okay. They are exiled in France. The Earl of Warwick goes to France, says, okay, if Edward marries my daughter, okay, I'll help you become king. So 1470, they come back, they beat Edward IV. Edward IV has to flee back to York. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Has to flee back to York. They have the country. Edward, Prince of Wales, is eventually going to marry Anne Neville, and Margaret of Anjou and the Earl of Warwick want to press on York, defeat the Yorkists, and the war. Henry VI will be king forever, but as you can see by the dates on there, it doesn't end that way. The Battle of Tewkesbury happens. This is where I got the Battle of Tewkesbury from.
Yeah.
Essentially, so the Lancastrians think that they can win this battle because they're up on a hill. But the wind is blowing.
You mean they have the high ground?
Yes, they have the high ground like Obi-Wan, but this time Anakin actually is more powerful. The wind is blowing in the Lancastrians' face. So the longbow essentially was the quintessential English weapon at the time. So whoever could win this battle won when the skirmish between the archers, they won the battle. The Lancastrians would fire their bows. Because of the wind, they'd never reach their marks, and it said that all they could hear from out of the wind was the laughs of Yorkist soldiers as they picked up the arrows of the Lancastrians and then shot them back. And the Lancastrians lose, and it looks as though the Yorkists are going to hold the monarchy from now on.
And for a while, they do.
Yeah.
But then, sorry, I'm gonna say, but then I might skip ahead a bit. But then that little marriage of Edward IV, a little brother of his came and said, maybe that little marriage wasn't a legal marriage.
Yeah. Edward IV really should have stayed away from Elizabeth Woodville. It kind of ruined a lot of things. If you can see up here, Edmund Tudor. Edmund Tudor is married to the daughter of John Beaufort, the Duke of Somerset, the original de facto leader of the Lancastrians. They have a son. This son largely stays out of the Wars of the Roses, but he eventually gets exiled to France. He even is excluded from the succession.
From way up here.
Yeah. In order to survive after the Lancastrians lose, he essentially gives up his claim to the throne. But some events back in England will happen
Yeah.
on this side. Yeah, Edward the Fourth. He
Dies.
loved his women. He loved his food, and it ended up killing him.
Yeah, I think I read the audiobook. He ate something he shouldn't have ate, like some food he shouldn't have ate. The agree with him. He's like, "Yeah, I'm fine," and it killed him.
Yeah. He had two. He had two sons, but they were very young. I think Edward
Like
the Fifth was only 5 years old.
I think it was like 12. I think it was 12 and 10. I think, or 8, maybe 8, 12 and 8. They were like
They were really young.
They were pre-teens at least.
Yeah. So originally the Woodvilles, who were former Lancastrians, they are they're the guardians of Edward the Fifth. Uh,
But his
Edward the
other
Fifth.
uncle wanted to
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
guardian.
Edward the Fifth would actually never be coronated. Yeah, he's put down as a king, but he would never be coronated. Richard essentially does a coup, and this is all in 1483.
Yeah.
He takes control of the king.
And they say since that marriage was quote illegal, then he's a bastard. I can't be king. So I'm a king now. Yay me.
Yeah, Richard becomes king, and this is where you get this myth about not myth, legend about the princes in the tower.
Oh, also I think we skipped the part where the older brother George, sided with the Lancastrians for a bit, so he kind of got kicked out of the line of succession.
Oh yeah. The Duke of Clarence and Warwick were both the engineers of bringing Henry VI back because Edward IV, I think, slighted him. I don't remember exactly what he did.
Probably the marriage thing.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So yeah, Richard decides, yeah, I'm going to become king, This whole king thing, I like it, And so this kind of renews the Lancastrian cause, but then it's like, who do we have? Everyone's dead. And there's this one guy in France by the name of Henry Tudor who says, okay, I guess I'll become king.
And then I don't know what happened. I think I don't know what happened before or after. He might have promised before the war that he would marry Edward V's older sister. Maybe it was after.
It's after.
They marry it.
Because he marries her, yeah. It's definitely after. It was a power play to essentially unite the two roses, unite the two sides.
I don't know. Like I said, it was after, but I heard this rumor. Maybe it was just a rumor that he promised to marry her before he went up to England.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure there were a couple. I might be thinking about something else. Rebellions of people claiming to be Edward, Prince of Wales, but I might be thinking about something else.
Maybe you are. Yeah. Even though, well, like I said, that legend thing, it may or may not be true, but at the time, maybe people believed it would be true, and they're like, I guess Richard III wasn't that popular, maybe.
Yeah, it's mostly legends from the Elizabethan and later Shakespeare talking about the princes in the tower, but essentially, you could see them playing in the tower, and then eventually, after a couple of days, where'd the princes go? And of course, they blame Richard III for murdering them in the Tower of London.
Either murdering them by order or it was like not caring that they were dead.
Yeah, murder by neglect. So Richard has been demonized, and I know RJ, when he was originally going to be on here, wanted to talk about that, about if Richard was actually like evil. And I don't like using the term evil or good for people in the past because, of course, they're doing what they think is necessary at the time. I mean, if you're willing to overthrow your nephew, I guess in our modern standard,
you're not that great. Kind of like how Like Abraham Lincoln would be a racist today's standards.
Yeah, by our modern standards, he would be a very Richard the Third would be evil, but he's not any more cruel than anyone else. Margaret of Anjou it was uh, incredibly cunning and incredibly cruel in her own right. Uh,
Anything that to keep your line in the line of success, and some people will do anything.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So 2 years after Richard comes to power, a battle happens at Bosworth. Uh, essentially, Richard saw a chance to win. He sees Henry Tudor and his retainers just sitting there, and Richard decides, I'm gonna go. Or is it the other way around? Oh yeah, Richard goes and charges them, but I think that's how it went. I might be getting it. Essentially, yeah. Henry wins, and he would remake England into his own vision.
Yeah. Yeah, first Henry won. First, I think first he claimed the throne by right of conquest.
Yeah, and then he would go back and essentially say that he would go back and retroactively change the date of his supposed accession to make it before Richard, so that he could say, "Yeah, I was the real king. I was just defending my throne."
Yeah, and then I think he also changed the thing saying yes, Edward IV's marriage was legal, and his kids were technically king. His descendants were kings, so Edward V was technically a king, and so his older sister is technically a princess too, and then they married him, and he married her.
To unite the branches, and essentially, this is like a symbolic uniting of the country. Not only will Henry clamp down on this retainer problem, he'll make the English monarchy more autocratic, as we'll see by his son, as you would see by his son in after him, Henry VIII.
Yeah.
uh,
but plus also not only Henry VII, their descendants were the future kings and queens of both England, Scotland, and later Great Britain.
Yeah, because Elizabeth decided to stay, at least in the public view, a virgin, but that's a different.
Well, I mean, yeah, and plus, his daughter married. I forget it was Mary, I think, or Margaret. I forget which one it was, but
Margaret Tudor.
She married the king, the James IV of Scotland, which later led the line of the Scottish, the Stuart kings.
Yeah. So this is essentially the death of medieval England. I don't really like using that term, but for people that don't really, this is the death of the England of like Richard the Lionheart, William the Conqueror, figures like that, and was the birth of essentially the Tudor monarchy and the Renaissance in England. It becomes incredibly peaceful in England, if not just because the Tudors were
at least peaceful politically. After this, then the religious problems began. That's a whole new different story.
Yeah, politically, the feudal structure is essentially like done away with, and it's pretty much because of the Wars of the Roses.
Yeah, and also, sorry, there's called the Houses of Lancaster and York, but technically they're still the House of
Plantagenet. Yeah, they're still the Plantagenets. Yeah, the Plantagenets ruled since Henry the Second.
Yeah.
Um, so they'd been ruling monarchs for about 300 years when the last one finally dies at Bosworth.
Yep. So so we pretty much did the history of it. Any other things you want to bring up that happened? So I guess well, like you said later on, this was mythologized a bit by about 100 years later by the Shakespearean time like of his granddaughter Elizabeth the First.
Uh, I th- I don't know if it was a. I don't know. He operated while James was also king. I don't remember.
Well, they're still both are still descendants of the winner
Yeah,
Henry the Seventh. So
and he really demonizes Richard III. I'm pretty sure that's one of his plays. Richard III. You know,
yeah,
the hunched king.
my horse quote.
Yeah.
My kingdom for a horse.
Oh, they recently found Richard III's remains and were able to identify him. Uh, yeah. He essentially didn't get a proper funeral by English royal
Yeah,
standards. He essentially was just, buried
yeah.
where he died.
Yeah, I saw that. Then I think they claimed that they found his nephews too, but I don't know if they actually verified that or not.
Yeah, I don't know. I just remember that they were able to, and he did actually have that back deformation, and it's probably he wasn't a bad soldier. You might think that he was because he lost a war, but he was actually a good soldier, and it's actually suspected that because of uh, his back issues that he actually felt more comfortable in the saddle. It supported him
Yeah,
better than when he walked, so he
yeah,
liked
Chris.
being in the horse way more
Yeah,
than anything else.
well, like people say, history is written by the winners.
Yes. Yeah. Um definitely. Probably it's probably why Margaret of Anjou also gets like a bad rap. Powerful women throughout history get bad raps in the sources, and Margaret of Anjou is seen as like some like cruel like willing to use anything to get her son and her husband to stay in power. Just yeah.
Kind of the same way that the first Plantagenet's wife, I forget her name, but she
Eleanor
did.
of
Yeah,
Aquitaine. Yeah.
Eleanor. Yeah, it's like who's to get her son, keep her line in power, her kids.
Well, yeah, she was very famous for. Well, I don't know if this is famous among people that aren't as familiar with history, but she liked having her sons rebel against her husband. And she had been married before. She'd been
To
married to the King of
the king
France.
of France, who and
Yeah.
they had two daughters,
Yeah.
but I don't know, but French and it was then or later on, daughters and France don't go together that well.
Yeah. Yeah, because Edward III, the 100 Years' War and this outgrowing of it, which is the Wars of the Roses, essentially starts because the direct line of the Capetians in France, who were the reigning dynasty, ended, and there was a big issue on who would succeed, and you had the two major factions: Edward III, who was the daughter of a French princess,
And the Valois, I think it
and the
was.
Valois, who were the closest male line descendants without any females in it of Hugh Capet.
But yeah, that's got to be complicated. You have to go back. Hey, male, no, go back until they find the closest male direct line. Uh,
Yeah.
England, at least they fix that now, but England at the time, they tried to avoid females being rulers until Elizabeth the First, or actually Mary the First. But like they still, starting with Edward the Third's granddaughter, Henry the First's daughter, they still sometimes went through the female line.
Yeah, they'd at least do that. So it's still pretty confusing, as you can see by this family tree. But
Yeah, actually, it wasn't until like very modern times, like a few years ago, that even the oldest female could even be queen, because before it was like the first kid, then the third son, then went back to the first female. I think now with the current Princess William's kids, that the older sister can surpass her younger brother in the line of succession.
there was actually another civil war in English history before this that would lead to the Plantagenets.
Oh yeah, the
The anarchy.
Stephen and
Empress Matilda.
Matilda, the nephew and the nephew of Henry II versus the daughter of Henry I. I mean, yeah,
Well, the nephew of
Henry the
Henry the First.
and
Yeah, Henry the First was a son of William the Conqueror,
yeah,
and his son died in a drunken stupor in the English Channel after winning like a campaign.
yeah,
Him and a bunch of nobles died.
and
So
yeah. Also, I think Stephen was supposed to be on that boat, but he decided not to be on the boat. At least that's what the legend says.
yeah, well, Henry kind of brought all of his vassals together and was like, "You are going to let my daughter be queen," and Stephen was there, and then he was like, no."
I think it was a two-part problem. That listen from I read the audiobook. One, when Henry first died, Stephen was in England, so he was there on the spot.
Yeah,
And two,
Matilda.
yeah,
Yeah,
Matilda was down in France.
yeah,
Her husband was the Count of Anjou, which some of the Norman people didn't like. Normans and the Anjous didn't like. I think they didn't want very well, at least according to the audiobook.
yeah. She's commonly known as Empress Matilda because she had originally been married to the Holy Roman Emperor,
Yeah,
but he died. So then she married Geoffrey Plantagenet, and the rest is history.
yeah. Oh, also, again, not much of this, but um, her father, Henry I, was married to a descendant of the original Anglo-Saxon kings.
Yeah, William the Conqueror had no familial claim to England. Neither did his son William the Second. But Henry the First married, I think, her name was Margaret. Uh, she was the daughter of a
Yeah, I think I
Scottish
think I
monarch.
think it was I think it was Mark. Yeah, no, it's got Mark. Yeah, I think it was Margaret. I think it was named after their daughter, named after him too. I can find another chart, but yeah, but they were a descendant of Edmund Ironside,
Edmund Ironside, yeah.
one of the half brothers of Edward the Confessor, through their English line, not through the Norman, Danish, Viking line, because that's all complicated.
Oh yeah, Anglo-Saxon England is extremely complicated. That's why I love it. But
Yeah, like I said, that's a whole different episode.
yeah, but an interesting thing that during the 100 Years' War, Edward III actually used the idea of French people coming up, conquering England, and extinguishing the English language as a way of rallying his people, which is funny because he's descended from a bunch of French people that came up but didn't try to extinguish language. The Normans actually left the English to their own devices, except for
Yeah.
the herring of the north, which not
Yeah,
very nice.
but I think for a while the French language was the nobility language, and the English for the commoners.
Yeah, it's why you have pork and pig, beef and cow. Uh, the names of the food is based off of. It's technically not French. It's Old Norman, which is a dialect of French, but
So,
like
and I think, but I think between Edward III and Henry the Seventh, the more modern English language came to effect, as an actual language for both common and royalty.
yeah, Richard II. I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong. He's the first English king to have gone out in the public and spoken English. There was a peasant rebellion during his reign, and he came out and he spoke a rousing speech in English to his peasants, and they all went home, which was like the best thing he ever did as king. Like almost the only good thing he did as king. uh,
Was that when he was still a kid, or was he an adult by that point?
I don't. I'm not that good with dates, to be honest.
Ah,
I'm good with the broader picture.
but like you said earlier before the thing started, historians don't really need to know dates that well.
Yeah, they just need to know the broad aspects. I mean, I'm better with dates when it comes down to the Anglo-Saxon period, cause, but even then, it's like, it's a little, but yeah, it shows the flaws of the English feudal system that weak monarchs will constantly have to fight for their thrones, and
Yeah, and also with both Richard III and Henry the Sixth, when you're becoming king as a kid, be sure you have a oh, and also Edward the Fifth.
yeah,
Be sure your uh, caretakers aren't gunning for the throne themselves.
yeah. Henry the Sixth actually became king when he was a child, and this was
I think
because
he was
Henry
like
the Fifth.
6 months old. I think almost maybe a year.
I don't know if he was that young because I'm pretty sure Edward the Fifth is the youngest ever, or is it he's the shortest reigning?
Maybe yeah. I think it's very short as raining, but I think if I remember, I gotta look it up again. But I think Henry the Sixth was a baby when his daddy died.
Yeah, his dad died, I think, of dysentery, what they called consumption back in the day. Um, Henry the Fifth. Interesting things about Henry the Fifth is that he was a rambunctious prince who didn't seem to follow orders, didn't seem to listen to anybody. But the minute he became king, he almost took on this chivalric, at least according to the sources. They could be biased because, he wins one of the greatest battles
Oh,
in English
okay.
history.
Look it up. According to Google, it might be accurate. It says Henry the Sixth. He was born on the 6th of December, 1421, at Windsor Castle. He succeeded to the throne as King of England at the age of 9 months on the 1st of September, 1422, the day after
Yeah,
his father died.
yeah. Henry the Fifth really. I mean, to be honest, John of Gaunt at least keeps not John of Gaunt. Oh my god, wrong one. The caretakers of Henry the Sixth, the Somersets, they at least they didn't want a gun for the throne because they couldn't. They they were bastards. So
Yeah. Also, I didn't notice this like earlier, but no, I mean not earlier, like years ago, but that the kingmakers were like closer cousins to Henry the Seventh and stuff than they were to the other family trees.
yeah, um this was because Edward the Third essentially and the kings afterwards tried to ensure that only family members were in high positions, which in the short term, of course, it keeps the kingdom together so that you can go out on campaigns, try to conquer France. But it
But
also leads to the fact that these people might end up using their claims to the throne later on.
and yeah, also right there, they were also connected to they were the wife of Richard the Duke of York too. So like
Yeah.
family trees are complicated.
Yeah, especially feudal family trees.
Like, let's okay, we gotta marry your fifth cousin once removed because
Well, yeah, you have like this very small pool of nobles, and you want to set up alliances. It's not more like, oh, I don't want to sully my genes with this woman. It's more, I want alliances with these people over
yeah.
here, so I'm going to, marriages for alliances.
Again, was might be one of the problems with this marriage right here of Edward the Fourth and Elizabeth. Like she was more of a peasant girl than she was a royalty.
She was low nobility, and her family was Lancastrian. She was married to a Lancastrian. She was a widower, and English people do not like widowers. It's why Edward the Eighth ends up abdicating in the 20th century. It's why we have problems with Meghan Merkel today. Stuff like that. They don't like widowers.
Megan, that's the wife of uh William's brother.
Yeah, Prince Harry. Yeah,
Harry. I can't remember if it was Harry or Henry.
I mean, yeah.
So
So yeah, the Tudors end up taking control of England, but it's a it's one of those things where it's like it's a fast burning rule with a lot of chaos, and then it ends abruptly.
oh,
In
a lot of chaos, like the say like the reign of the 9 Day Queen for a while.
yeah, that's Jane Grey, right?
Yeah,
Lady Jane Grey. Yeah,
because like because Edward the I think it was Edward the
sixth.
Sixth was like instead of my Catholic sister being queen, how about this girl over here?
Yeah, I think it's pretty ironic. Henry VIII went through 6 wives so that he could get a son, and then his son dies before he before he's of age. and his and his daughter by oh my god, Anne Boleyn, yeah, Elizabeth, turns
Yeah,
out to be a pretty good monarch.
yeah.
He didn't need it in the end, But I understand where he was coming from, because he was the king right after this massive civil war spanning generations. So I can see how he's like, I want to, have a more secure reign.
Yeah, even though technically none of his descendants were were in the future were in the future line succession, it was more of his sister's kids.
Yeah. I mean, there's possibility. It's really hard to follow the illegitimate lines that come off of them, because the illegitimate lines will usually become nobility in their own right. Uh, I know that Princess Diana was a descendant of an illegitimate child of Charles II. Stuff like that. Like, randomly, these people will come up, but there's none that I know of, at
Yeah,
least.
that's a whole different line where only like this only one of James the sixth slash first descendants out of like hundreds of thousands of people, because they were the first Protestant, and the Catholics were cut out.
Oh yeah, Georg Ludwig, who'd become George the First. This is originally going to be his mom. But yeah, this is the end of the feudal problem and the beginning of the religion problem. And tied in with that is how much power the king will have, because during this entire period, parliament's developing. The first king to really hold a bunch of parliaments is Edward the First,
Yeah.
and parliament is growing in power, and eventually,
Yeah, I think it was starting with John, but first Parliament was mainly the barons and nobles and stuff, but later on became more of a commoner thing too.
yeah, the House of Commons and the House of Lords. Pretty sure that distinction happens around this time. Uh, but yeah, this ends the feudal era and begins the struggle between religion and the struggle between parliament and the monarchy. Who's more powerful? It will lead to a king getting put on trial and then beheaded, Charles the First. A short-lived British Republic. That's a weird sounding thing. And eventually, Protestantism wins and Parliament wins, but so do the monarchs because they stay. They don't leave.
I try to find some more pictures and stuff. Anybody in our chat have any questions for any of us? So I was really hoping James RJ could be here too, but I guess he couldn't make it today.
Yeah, because he was the guy with all the questions, man. Like,
All right. We have 3 viewers, or at least maybe 1, 2 viewers. I don't know. But come on, anybody questions? Questions? All right. So anything else you want to talk about of this time period?
no, it's just. I mean, the main thing is that it's the end of the medieval period, beginning
Yeah.
of the Renaissance in England.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, also yeah. I was just yeah. Also another thing. We mentioned this earlier. Um, uh, Around this time, not in England and other countries, there were a lot more intermarriages. Like like Henry VII married one son, then laid the same son to one of the daughters of the the newly united kings and queen of Spain.
Yeah, Mary the First married. There were 4 Philips in a row. I can't remember which number it
Philip
was,
the
but
Second. Philip the
Philip
Second.
II of Spain, and he became the is it Ure Uxoris, king of, through his wife, king of
Yeah.
Wait, isn't vassal another term for protect? Vassals are the ones that are underneath. You have the king, then you have a higher noble,
Like
middling noble,
Duke or Earl, and then
noble.
yeah, how the ranks happen levels like you have dukes, earls, barons, counts, viscounts, all these different
Yeah, it's not always. It's not always.
clear.
It's not always clear, and that's why a lot of people have had troubles with defining feudalism for a long time. Mark looked at, but lately people have started to be like, this term feudalism. It's not really a real thing out in the real world. It's more.
Kind of. Oh, yeah, it's a vassal another term for protector. Yeah, no, I think no, I think protector. I think it's more like I said. I think it's more of a like subordinate, maybe.
Yeah, the vassal is the subordinate. They provide things in turn for land, essentially.
Yeah, this picture is kind of clear, but yeah, there's Henry VIII, kids, then Elizabeth, Edward. Uh, Over here's the Scottish kings. I I think over here is Lady Jane Grey.
Yeah. Uh, she was never crowned, but yeah. I'm pretty sure Queen Mary was originally going to let her live, but then was like, I changed my mind.
Be
And
like, yeah,
Mary had phantom pregnancies too, so she had her own mental health issues.
yeah. Which would have been even more complicated because that would like that would it would be like I think at the time they were starting to break away from the Catholics, but they were still some Catholics there, But after her, they're like, nope, we're Protestants now.
Oh yeah, Mary was the daughter of Henry the Eighth's first wife, who was a Catholic, and Henry the
Yeah,
Eighth,
yeah, like I said,
he
he was the daughter. Sorry, he was she was the daughter of the first wife, who
yeah
was one of the daughters of again the United Catholic Spain, like the daughter of
yeah
Ferdinand and Isabella, who like recently united Spain like a few years later.
yeah yeah, and Henry the Eighth, he starts the English Reformation, but he died believing that he was a true Catholic.
Yeah,
But Catherine of
he
Aragon,
was still
she's definitely
yeah. It's like he was still
he was still what?
I think he still considered himself a Catholic, but he's like, but I'm in charge, not the Pope. That was all. That was his big thing.
Yeah, and that's that's another big issue throughout English history. Henry II constantly battled the church over who's more powerful in England when it comes to the church. Is it me, the king, or is it the Pope? And he actually, one of his childhood friends, Thomas Becket, who is the Archbishop of Canterbury,
Yeah,
gets murdered, and he has
yeah,
to
because he
yeah
thought. I think again, same audiobook. He thought he thought I'm powerful, so I can point this guy. I can point this guy, as the make him jump the line. Point this guy as the watch the Archbishop of Canterbury, everything will be fine. But then he was like, hey, you may be my friend, but not since I'm a religious guy. Gotta follow orders from the Pope. It's like what?
yeah no he Henry II and Thomas Becket were childhood friends, but uh so when Henry II puts him into power, he's like, oh yeah, he'll follow my beck and call. But it turns out Thomas Becket was more loyal to the Pope than Henry II thought, and it led to some problems. But yeah, so this has
Well,
actually
yeah,
been
yeah.
a problem for the English monarchs, and eventually Henry VIII is just like, you know what, screw it, I'll become the head of the Church of England. We're still Catholics, but we're just having a little break from the Pope for a little bit, know? And it just becomes permanent.
Yeah. But yeah, so I think like then we talk about other stuff in the future. But anything, anything on your channel that you want to advertise or anything?
Not yet. Currently, so currently my grandpa is. I gave him the idea. My grandpa worked for Boeing. Uh, so he worked on a bunch of space program stuff. He worked on the lunar rover, the lunar orbiter, and stuff. And I was like, I could corner this market on YouTube, okay? Someone who actually worked on the space program comes out and debunks flat earthers, space deniers, and all that. Not really. He's recently been diagnosed. It's not that bad of a cancer, but it's he's got cancer. And his eyesight sucks. His hearing sucks, and I just wanted to make sure he could he felt like he was doing something. You know, he's had a very tough uh, quarantine period over the last year and a half, and so currently he's working on his intro video where he'll tell you all that he worked on and stuff. But I think I'm gonna help him make stuff.
All right, cool.
I hope he doesn't dox me though.
Can't wait to see it. As for me, next week we will be. I'll be looking at history again, but a little bit further back. Not as quite as recent as the War of the Roses, but we're going to check the Permian period. I think that's a little bit further back in our history.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know of any kings from the Permian period. Maybe Gorgonopsids. I don't know.
Yeah, but spoilers, it does not have a happy ending.
Kind of like this doesn't have a happy ending for Edward V. Poor kid.
But anyways, thanks for being on. Hopefully we can.
Yeah. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, hopefully we can later on next year we can do some deep dive and more English history and medieval history.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I love talking about history. I kind of wanted to mold a little bit more about Edward III, you know, but
like I said, that could be a whole different the whole new topic. Like I said, yeah. Sometimes when only two of us, we can run out of things to talk about. It's like that. At least three guests sometimes.
Yeah, I really wish RJ was here, but it's okay. He needs to get better internet though.
Oh, definitely. But anyways, you have any closing statements you want to say? A catchphrase or anything?
Nope.
All right,
good.
Then. Never stop learning and enjoy the randomness. We'll see you all next time. Bye.